Fort Henry News, December the 23rd, 1937. The Standing Rock Circuit of the M.E. Church held its quarterly conference Friday at St. Mary's Church. Brother Hinkle, presiding elder of Clarksville, preached a wonderful sermon in the morning on how to have a great revival. Brother Armstrong of Dover was present also. After lunch, business of the church was attended to. Jack Gray Jr. of UT Junior College at Martin is visiting his parents, Mr. and Mrs. A.J. Gray, for the Christmas holidays. Mr. and Mrs. Sam Wallace and daughter Jewel of Dover spent Sunday with Mr. and Mrs. C.C. Wallace and family. Give you a little background on the Sam Wallace and C.C. or Christopher Columbus Wallace families. Sam Wallace and Christopher Columbus Wallace were brothers. They were the parents of, or the children of, Nathan Green Wallace, born 1849 in Stewart County, and passed away 1926 in Indian Mound, Stewart County. Their mother was Mary Lorraine Boyd. She was born 1853 in Stewart County. She passed away in 1927 in Indian Mound, Tennessee. Sam's wife was Sally Alma Clenard. I'm going to read Sam's obituary. Normally, that's a pretty good snapshot of a person's life. Rites held for Sam Wallace. This is February of 1964. Funeral services for Sam Cephas Wallace, 80, former Stewart County tax assessor and retired farmer, were held Tuesday, February the 25th at 2:30 p.m. at the First Christian Church, with Reverend Eugene M. Boring officiating. Burial was in the Hillcrest Cemetery with Milligan Funeral Home in charge. Wallace was a native of Stewart County and a Mason. He served as tax assessor for 24 years and was a substitute rural mail carrier for 30 years. Pallbearers were Curtis Cato, Raymond Williams, Gillis Wallace, Douglas Cockrell, Thomas Vaughn, and Herschel Cockrell. Survivors include his widow, Mrs. Sally Clenard Wallace, 3 sons, Carter of Van Nuys, California, Grady and Boyd Wallace, Dover, 4 daughters, Mrs. Earl Von Dover, Mrs. Burden Smith, Clarksville, Mrs. Mabel Morgan, Oak Grove, and Mrs. Jewel Darnell, Central City, Kentucky. 1 brother, Columbus Wallace, Dover. He was a member of the First Christian Church in Dover and a Mason in the Lineport Lodge number 207 and A.M. Bumpus Mills, Tennessee. As I mentioned, Sam's wife was Sally Alma Clenard, and this is her obituary. Sally Wallace. Sally Alma Wallace, 98, of Dover, died Monday at Memorial Hospital in Clarksville. The funeral will be at 2 p.m. today at England Memorial Chapel in Dover, with the Reverends Carl Alexander and Billy R. Jones officiating. Burial will be in the Hillcrest Cemetery in Dover. Visitation will be until the hour of service. Mrs. Wallace was born May the 2nd, 1886 in Stewart County, the daughter of Alex and Nellie McCoy Clenard. She was the widow of Sam C. Wallace. Mrs. Wallace was a homemaker and a member of the First Christian Church of Dover. Survivors include 2 sons, Grady Wallace of Big Rock and Carter Wallace of Loomis, California. 4 daughters, Mary Lou Vaughn and Bertie Carver of Clarksville, Mabel Morgan of Oak Grove, Kentucky, and Jewel Darnell, Madisonville, Kentucky. 1 sister, Bessie Melton of Granite City, Illinois, 31 grandchildren, 56 great-grandchildren, and 8 great-great-grandchildren. This is Sally and Sam's headstone. They were buried in the Hillcrest Cemetery in Dover, Tennessee. This is located by the Fort Donelson Park Cemetery, just across the road from the Fort Donelson Cemetery. This is an obituary for Sarah Jewel Wallace Darnell, which was mentioned in the article as being the daughter of Sam and Sally. Sarah Jewel Wallace Darnell, 77, of Isley, Kentucky, died Saturday, November the 30th, 2002, at the Regional Medical Center in Madisonville, Kentucky. The funeral will be at 2 p.m. today at Bashir Funeral Home in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, with the Reverends Richard Sisk and Bobby Alvey officiating. Burial will be in the Isley Cemetery. She was born November the 14th, 1925 in Stewart County, daughter of Samuel Cephas and Sally Alma Clenard Wallace. She was preceded in death by 2 daughters, Lana Joyce and Brenda Joyce Darnell. Survivors include her husband, the Reverend Glenn Darnell of Isley, 2 daughters, LaDonna Embry Clarksville, Holly Houghton Isley, 5 sons, the Reverend Dwight Darnell, Madisonville, Kentucky, David Darnell Isley, Dale Darnell of Clay, Kentucky, Barry Darnell of Princeton, Kentucky, O'Neill Burgess, Dexter, Kentucky, a sister, Mabel Davenport of Trenton, Kentucky, a brother, Grady Wallace of Stewart County, 15 grandchildren, 14 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. Pallbearers will be Darren Darnell, Jason Darnell, Brandon Darnell, Eddie Burgess, Terry Vaughn, and Jerry Vaughn. Honorary pallbearers will be all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And now I'd like to give you a little background on C.C. or Christopher Columbus Wallace and his wife Vesta through their obituaries. C.C. Wallace. Columbus C. Wallace, 85, retired Stewart County Rural Mail Carrier of Clarksville, died Tuesday, October 1971 at 11:15 p.m. in Clarksville Memorial Hospital following a long illness. Funeral services will be conducted at 2 p.m. Friday at the First Baptist Church, Dover, by the Reverend Maxie Milliken. Burial will be in the Green Cemetery. Clarksville Milligan Funeral Home in Dover in charge. He was born in Stewart County, February the 12th, 1886, son of the late Nathan and Lou Boyd Wallace. He was a member of the Free Will Baptist Church and served with the U.S. Navy. He was a member of the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. Survivors are his widow, Mrs. Vesta Morris Wallace, whom he married December the 24th, 1915. 5 sons, Morris and Samuel, both of Stewart, Tennessee, Columbus Wallace Jr. of Dover, Clarence Wallace of Indian Mound, and Joe Wallace, Clarksville. 5 daughters, Mrs. Vesta Atkins, Paris, Tennessee, Mrs. Eileen Russell, Evansville, Indiana, Mrs. Maxine Walford, Guthrie, Kentucky, Mrs. Ramey Simpson, and Mrs. Marie Wall, both of Clarksville. 31 grandchildren, 13 great-grandchildren, and pallbearers will be Don Norfleet, Mike Clement, Kevin Roden, Chet Higdon, Hunter Meadows, and Ronnie Doris. Obituary for Vesta Morris Wallace. Vesta Wallace, Vesta Lou Wallace, 98, 438 High Point Road, Clarksville, died Wednesday, January the 26th, 1994, at Clarksville Memorial Hospital. The funeral will be at 1 p.m. Saturday at England Funeral Home, Dover, with the Reverend Maxie Milliken officiating. Burial will be in the Greenwood Cemetery. Visitation will be at the funeral home until the time of service. She was born November the 25th, 1895 in Henry County, a daughter of J.B. Morris and Belle Phillips Morris. She was the widow of Christopher Columbus Wallace. Mrs. Wallace was a homemaker and a Free Will Baptist. Survivors include 4 sons: J.C. Wallace of Dover, Clarence Wallace, Indian Mound, Joe Wallace, Clarksville, and Sammy N. Wallace, Nashville. 5 daughters: Verdi Mae Adkins, Paris, Eileen Russell, Evansville, Indiana, and Ramey Simpson, Marie Steele, and Maxine Walford, all of Clarksville. A sister, Vida Gardner, Mooresville, Indiana. 30 grandchildren, 74 great-grandchildren, and 6 great-great-grandchildren. Pallbearers will be Donald Wallace, Wallace Russell, Alfred Walford, Ricky Wallace, Tony Wallace, Dale Wallace, and Randy Wall. Continue reading the Fort Henry News from December the 23rd, 1937. Mrs. Raymond Sykes of Granite City, Illinois, is visiting her sister, Mrs. Bill Gardner. Charles C. Bruton of Dover spent the weekend with Hoover Russell of Mobley. Opal Job and Groover Parker of Paris spent the weekend with their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Van Job and Mr. and Mrs. J.A. Parker of Standing Rock. Give you some background information on Opal Job and Groover Parker. The obituary for Opal Job Jackson. Opal Christine Job Jackson, aged 95, of Dover, passed away Thursday, November the 29th, 2012, at her home. The funeral service will be at 2 p.m. Sunday, December the 2nd, at the Fort Donelson United Methodist Church, with the Reverend Tom Benford and Reverend Don Bailey to officiate. Burial will follow in the Sexton Cemetery. Visitation will be from 5 to 7 p.m. Saturday at the England Funeral Home, and from 1 until the time of service Sunday at the Fort Donelson United Methodist Church, Dover. Family and friends will serve as pallbearers. Ms. Jackson was born October the 28th, 1918 in Stewart County, daughter of William Van and Muriel Parker Job. She married George Cecil Jackson November the 8th, 1942, and lived in McKenzie, Tennessee, most of her married life. She was the class valedictorian of Dover High School, 1936, and graduated from Toller's Business College. She worked as the First Methodist Church secretary and was member of the Fort Donelson United Methodist Church and Choir. Her siblings were Iva Job, Ruby Moore, Hayden Job, Hazel Melton Job, Alberta Job Settle, Howard B. Job, and Benny Job. Survivors include her children, Don Job Jackson, Columbia, South Carolina, Robert Cecil Jackson, Knoxville, Tennessee. Grandchildren, Kelly Jackson of Kennemore, Ethan Hunter Jackson, Robert Clay Jackson, Aaron Wynn Jackson. Great-grandchildren, Ryan Job Kennemore and Aaron Hunter Kennemore. Found a couple of articles on Groover. The first was when he was in the military, and it would have been somewhere in 43 to 45, I would imagine. T5 Groover Parker writes from New Guinea. T5 Grover Parker is somewhere in New Guinea, according to a letter received by his wife on October the 17th. The letter dated October the 5th stated that he was well and doing straight. He told of some of his experience while at sea. He crossed the equator on the 8th of September and was privileged to attend a David Jones court, which is an initiation which takes place when the equator is crossed. At this time, sailors who are crossing for the first time are compelled to take part in this celebration, which affords much fun, especially to the onlookers. T5 Parker, who was employed as bookkeeper for Boatwright Wholesale Grocery before his induction, is the son of Mr. and Mrs. J.A. Parker of Springfield, Tennessee. He was inducted into the Army in July 43 and trained at Fort Seals, Oklahoma, Fort Ord, California, and Camp Phillips, Texas. He left Camp Phillips for Port of Embarkment on August the 2nd. His wife, the former Miss Orlean Walford of Dover, Tennessee, resides on North 5th Street. The second article I found on Groover was his obituary. Groover A. Parker, 68 of 218 South 12th Street, Murray, Kentucky, died Friday, June the 13th, 1986, at his home. His sudden death was from an apparent heart attack. Mr. Parker was a retired co-owner of Parker Popcorn Company, Murray. A veteran of World War II, he was a member of Goshen United Methodist Church and served on the church's administrative board. The Murray man was a member and past president of Murray Lions Club, was treasurer and member of a board of Murray Callaway County, Need Lion Church and Cooperative Ministry Incorporated, was a member of the board of the local service unit of the Salvation Army. He was born December the 4th, 1917 in Stewart County, Tennessee. He was the son of Mattie McCood Parker and the late Jesse A. Parker. One son, Jesse Thomas Parker, died April 8, 1941. Survivors are his wife, Mrs. Orlean Walford Parker, whom he married December the 18th, 1938. His mother, Mrs. Mattie Parker, 202 South 9th Street, Murray. One sister, Mrs. Philip Norma Young of Seattle, Massachusetts. Two brothers, the Reverend Edward Parker, Weechek, North Dakota, and Harry Parker, Granite City, Illinois. Funeral service will be held at the Blaylock Coleman Funeral Home, Murray, at 1 p.m. Monday, June the 16th. Burial was in the Walford Cemetery, Stewart County, Tennessee. Continue reading the Fort Henry News from December 23rd, 1937. Mrs. Jack Sykes had as her guest last week her mother, Mrs. Pardue of Erin. Mr. and Mrs. Bob Dalton of Paducah spent last Sunday with Mrs. Dalton's parents, Mr. and Mrs. H.R. Gearin of Mobley. Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Lynn had as their guests last Sunday Mr. and Mrs. Robert Presley of Lone Oak Road, Paducah, Kentucky. Have a few articles on William Henry Lynn, born 1874 in Hardin, Kentucky, passed away 1960 in Paducah, Kentucky, and his wife, Nanny Elizabeth West Lynn. She was born 1878 in Montgomery County, Tennessee. She passed away 1963 in Paducah, Kentucky. This is their announcement of their 65th wedding anniversary. Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Lynn observed 65th anniversary. Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Lynn of Paducah, Route 5, are celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary on February the 22nd. They were married in Stewart County, Tennessee, February 22nd, 1894, by Justice of the Peace Armstrong Parker. Because of the failing health of both Mr. and Mrs. Lynn, their anniversary will be observed quietly. No open house is planned. Mrs. Lynn is a former Miss Nanny E. West, daughter of the late Mr. and Mrs. William C. West of Mobley, Tennessee. She was born in 1878 in Montgomery County, Tennessee, and observed her 81st birthday on February the 21st. Mr. Lynn was born in Crittenden County, Kentucky on October the 9th, 1874, son of Mr. and Mrs. Reuben Lynn. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn lived in Stewart County until 1941, when they moved to their home, West Paducah Route 1. Both are members of the Lone Oak Methodist Church. The celebrants are the parents of 10 living children: Mrs. Lily Gearin of Chickamauga, Georgia; Eldridge Lynn of Model, Tennessee; G.A. or Bruce Lynn of Madison, Illinois; Mrs. Arona Tate of Richland, Washington; Otis Lynn of Kevel; James R. Lynn of Hammond, Illinois; Mrs. Jessie Knott, Oscar, Elmer, and Charlie Lynn of Paducah. They have 3 children deceased. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn are the grandparents of 39 grandchildren and 46 great-grandchildren, all living. At the present, the Lynns reside with their daughter, Mrs. Knott, on Route 5. This is the obituary for William Henry Lynn. W.H. Lynn, McCracken farmer, dies. W.H. Lynn, 85, a retired farmer, died at 7:30 p.m. Friday at his home on Contest Road. A native of Crittenden County, Mr. Lynn moved to McCracken County in 1941 from Dover, Tennessee. He was a member of the Lone Oak Methodist Church and the Masonic Lodge at Dover. He is survived by his widow, Mrs. Nanny E. Lynn, 7 sons, J.E. and Charles Lynn, Paducah; James R. Otis and Oscar Lynn, McCracken County; George Lynn, Madison, Illinois; and R.E. Lynn, Dover. 3 daughters, Mrs. Lily Gearin, Chickamauga, Georgia; Jessie Knott, McCracken County; and Arona Tate, 39 grandchildren and 49 great-grandchildren. Funeral service will be held at 2:30 p.m. Sunday at Walnut Grove Baptist Church in Stewart County, Tennessee, with the Reverend Lynn Hayes officiating. Burial will be in the Walford Cemetery. This is the obituary for Nanny Elizabeth West Lynn. Woman dies at 85, leaves a total of 113 descendants. Mrs. Nanny Elizabeth Lynn, 85, who had 113 descendants, died at 1:15 a.m. today at her home on Kevel, Route 3 in the Ragland community. Ms. Lynn, widow of William Henry Lynn, was a member of the Lone Oak Methodist Church. Her survivors include 7 sons: J.E., R.E., Charles H., James R., George, Otis, and Oscar Lynn, all of McCracken County. 3 daughters, Mrs. Lily Gearin of Georgia, Mrs. Jessie Knott of McCracken County, and Mrs. Aaron Tate of Washington. 2 brothers, Charlie West of Murray and Frank West of Almo. 2 sisters, Mrs. Rena McCutcheon of Clarksville, Tennessee, and Ms. Inez Rawlings of Woodlawn, Tennessee. 39 grandchildren, 62 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. Funeral service will be held at 2 p.m. Thursday at Walnut Grove Baptist Church in Stewart County, Tennessee, with the Reverend Edgar C. Cerise and the Reverend Walter L. Hayes officiating. Burial will be in the Walford Cemetery, also in Stewart County. Friends may call at the Lindsay Funeral Home. The Robert L. Presleys, who were visiting Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Lynn in the December 23, 1937 Fort Henry News, was Arona Lynn, which would have been the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Lynn. Robert Presley and Arona marriage ended in divorce, and this is the obituary for Robert L. Presley. Robert L. Presley dies in Chicago. Robert L. Presley, 33, 1229 Hampton, died Sunday at 4:55 a.m. at the Illinois Central Hospital in Chicago. Born in Jackson, Tennessee, he came to Paducah at an early age. He was a member of the Emmanuel Baptist Church in Masonic Lodge number 127. He had been a boilermaker for the IC Railroad for 12 years. Presley is survived by his widow, Mrs. May Presley, Paducah, a son, Terry Presley of Richland, Kansas, a sister, Mrs. Louise Rudolph, Paducah. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. J.L. Presley, Paducah. His funeral service will be held Wednesday at 2 p.m. at the Emmanuel Baptist Church, with the Reverend Frank Norfleet officiating. Burial will be in the Maple Lawn Cemetery. Masonic Lodge number 127 will conduct graveside rites. Friends may call at Lindsay's on Tuesday. The child in this photograph here is Terry Presley, which was the son of Arona and Robert. This is Arona and her husband, Bob Tate. The photo was in Richland, Washington, about 1953. This is from a newspaper article from September the 3rd, 1982. Lynn family reunion planned. The annual Lynn family reunion will be Sunday at the home of Howard and Mildred Job in the Standing Rock community of Stewart County. All friends and relatives of the late William H. and Nanny West Lynn are invited to attend. Honored guests will be Arona Lynn Tate. A basket lunch will be served at noon, and guests should bring lawn chairs and table service. This is a marriage announcement of Miss Arona Lynn to Robert Tate. Miss Arona Lynn weds Robert Tate Tuesday afternoon. Mr. and Mrs. William H. Lynn of the Cairo Road announced the marriage of their daughter Arona to Robert H. Tate Jr., son of Mr. and Mrs. Merlin Tate of Louisville. The double ring ceremony was performed Tuesday, June 18th at the Kentucky Avenue Presbyterian Church with the Reverend Charles M. Bunce officiating. The bride wore an Adlai Simpson dress of white jersey with black accessories and a shoulder corsage of red rosebuds and feverfew. Mrs. Rex D. Everett, her only attendant, wore a blue dress with black accessories and a corsage of red roses. Rex D. Everett was the best man. Mr. Tate served for 2.5 years in the Army Air Forces as an instructor. He is now employed by the B.F. Goodrich Company in Louisville. After June 23rd, the couple will be at home at 1427 South 32nd Street, Louisville. This is the obituary for Arona Elizabeth Tate. Yakima, Washington. Arona Elizabeth Tate, 85, Yakima, died Friday, September the 22nd, 2006, at the Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital. Arona was born in Mobley, Tennessee on October the 10th, 1920, where she attended school through the 8th grade in a one-room school. She moved with her family to Dover, Tennessee, and attended Dover High School and graduated from Lone Oak High School at Lone Oak, Kentucky. She married Robert H. Tate Jr. in Paducah, Kentucky. They lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and then moved to Richland, Washington. They moved to Colwich in 1964, and the couple owned and operated Tate's Food Center in Cowichy for 8 years. Arona then owned Ceramics by Aroma in Colwich. She was secretary for the Colwich Sewer District until her retirement in 1992, when she moved to Yakima. Arona was a longtime member of the Yakima Southern Baptist Church and past matron of the Vesta chapter of the Order of Eastern Star. She enjoyed cooking, crocheting, and arts and crafts. She is survived by 3 sons, Terry Tate of Seattle, Washington, Jacob Barbara Tate, and John Patty Tate, both of Yakima, 8 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren. Arona was preceded in death by her parents, her husband, Robert H. Tate, Jr., on November 10, 1985, one son, Robert H. Tate III, in 1991, a daughter, Sandra Jean, 8 brothers and 4 sisters. Visitation will be held from 12 noon until 5 p.m. Sunday at the Keith and Keith 9th Avenue Chapel. This concludes the reading of the Fort Henry News for December the 23rd, 1937. I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to comment and let me know where I'm wrong or if there's anything that you would like me to include. Thank you.